Welcome to the daily current affairs analysis of Shankar IAS Academy. Today we will be discussing the current affairs of 18th of September 2025. So before going into the topic, I would request you all to subscribe to this channel so you will get regular updates, and also like, comment and share this video to your friends. So what are the topics we are going to discuss today? So first topic would be carbon emissions and heat waves. How these companies emitting the carbon emissions are directly linked to this heat waves. So the next topic would be PM Mitra Park. So major milestone in terms of textile industry. So next would be South China Sea. How there is a collision of a ship in terms of South China Sea is creating a tension right now. Next topic we will be discussing what is testicular torsion and how it can remain a very big issue in terms of children, and what is the treatment with respect to it. And finally we will be discussing about certain topics which focuses specifically on preliminary examination. Now we will go into the discussion. The next topic we are going to discuss is the carbon emission from fossil fuel companies, how they are directly linked to the heat waves. So there is a new study regarding the direct link between the heat waves and these fossil fuel companies. We will see what is that. So new scientific study is directly linking these heat waves worldwide to carbon emission from the major fossil fuel companies. So first time they are directly linking to it. That is the speciality about this study. So this study is the systematic attribution of heat waves to emission of carbon majors. So this study has been published in the journal Nature on September 10, 2025. So there are researchers from different countries, from Zurich, from Austria, from United Kingdom and others. So what they have analyzed? They have analyzed almost 213 global heat waves in the period of 2000 to 2023. So what is heat wave basically? Heat wave is a abnormally high temperature. It lasts for a period for several days or more, often well above the usual climate. For example, that particular place, let's say, has during summer can reach up to 40 degrees Celsius. But that particular period is seeing more degrees, like it is reaching even 43 degrees Celsius, and it is sustaining for several days. We call it as heat wave. At that particular region and time of the year there is a climate, but that temperature is beyond the climate during that particular timing. We call it as a heat wave. So what will happen? This increase in temperature will lead to loss of life also sometimes. So temperature threshold, let's say in plains, criteria will be more than 40 degrees Celsius, coastal region more than 37 degrees Celsius, and hilly region more than 30 degrees Celsius. We call it as heat wave. So the heat wave is when the average temperature, like plus or minus, it is more from 4.5 degrees Celsius to 6.4 degrees Celsius. We call it as heat wave. It is above 6.5 degrees Celsius. We call it as severe heat wave. And absolute values for more than 45 degrees Celsius is heat wave. If it is more than 47 degrees Celsius, it is severe heat wave. So you have to look at what is the question, what is the number, and what is the criteria. Based on that, answer the question. So in plains, it is more than 40 degrees Celsius, coastal area more than 37 degrees Celsius, hilly regions more than 30 degrees Celsius. From normal, what might be the changes? More than 4.5 to 6, it is heat wave. If it is more than 6.5, it is severe heat wave. So more than 45 degrees Celsius, it is heat wave. More than 47 degrees Celsius, severe heat wave. So it depends on what is the temperature. We can decide whether it is a heat wave or severe heat wave. So what is the direct attribution to these fossil fuel companies? We will see. They say that 14 biggest fossil fuel companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron are linked to these heat waves. So each company's emission alone have been enough to cause at least 50 heat waves. That wouldn't have happened without the climate change. That is what they are saying. So these emissions, what they say basically is 14 biggest fossil fuel companies and the emissions from them alone are causing at least 50 heat waves in a region. So which is very, very bad. And what is the human cost? Approximately 4,89,000 people have died annually from 2000 to 2019 from heat alone. many due to climate change fueled heat waves. See, so almost 4,89,000 people per year. See the number from 2000 to 2019, that is 19 years per year. Every year 4,89,000 people have lost their life due to heat. That much severe these heat waves are. So major heat wave events, what are those? So in 2023, there was a heat wave in Balia, Uttar Pradesh. At least 68 deaths happened there. Pacific Northwest, USA and Canada, in 2021, 100 died in the heat dome. In Europe 2003, around 30,000 deaths happened because of heat waves. So these are the major heat wave events. And how emission is linked to heat wave? Now we have to understand that. See, carbon emissions, like burning of coal, oil, gas, it releases carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases. So these greenhouse gases trap the heat. They act like a blanket. Basically the global warming. But here the increase in thickness of these greenhouse gases is increasing the atmospheric density of these gases. So what happened? More heat trapped inside. So leading to increase in heat waves, increase in temperature because of trapped heat. So what is global warming generally is increase in average temperature, but heat waves, this due to this climate change, it is increasing the temperature, average temperature. And also the issue here is they are becoming more intense and the frequency of them occurring is also increasing. So this is leading to increase in impact on the population. So that is the issue with respect to this heat wave. So I am repeating, the fossil fuel companies emitting these greenhouse gases, these greenhouse gases are increasing density in terms of the atmosphere, leading to more trapped heat. So these more trapped heat increases the temperature in those particular area than the normal temperature, leading to rise in heat waves. So this is increased in frequency also, it is happening more frequently, leading to rise in deaths. So mechanisms to regulate carbon emissions, what are the mechanisms we have? Very important. So international mechanisms, we have Paris Agreement 2015, which was passed in COP21. Countries have set emissions reduction targets, which is called as nationally determined contribution. Then we have Kyoto Protocol. This has been introduced as legally binding emission reduction targets for the developed countries. Next we have market based mechanism like carbon tax, where direct tax on carbon emissions or fossil fuels. This is now in Sweden and Canada we are seeing. Even European Union has announced this carbon tax border mechanism. Next is cap and trade. Government sets a cap on total emission. Companies will buy and sell the allowances. This is found in European Union, California, etc. Carbon credits and offsets. Companies invest in renewable energy, reforestation and afforestation will be done, or clean technology will be used. Such a way they will gain the carbon credits so that they balance their emissions. So since we are seeing net zero emission, so this can be used as a mechanism. Technological mechanism, clean energy transition by converting, instead of using fossil fuels, going for a clean energy. Then very importantly, carbon capture and storage mechanism. We have direct capture mechanisms also, and also going for green hydrogen, low emission alternative fuel. So what is the conclusion is that, so we should regulate the carbon emission. Only then we can address these heat waves, because climate change directly linked to the heat waves. Instead of addressing these greenhouse gas emissions, we cannot address the heat waves directly. Strict regulation, proper following of market tools, and shifting towards just a transition towards sustainable technologies will help in terms of addressing these heat wave issues. So there is a mains question related to it. Carbon emissions have been directly linked to increasing frequency and intensity of global heat waves. Discuss the mechanism available to regulate emissions and suggest measures India can adopt to balance developed needs with climate justice. So this is a very good question. Here you have to talk about what is the link between carbon emission and heat wave. So you have to talk about the basic understanding how global warming takes place and how greenhouse gas contribute to them. Then talk about what are the mechanisms. We discussed about the international mechanism, market mechanism and technological mechanism. Speak about them and please talk about the individual measures also, what individuals can do. Then suggest what are the measures India can adapt right now. So all these and what is climate justice. So these are the three parts of the questions. Addressing three parts of the questions will give a very good answer. And finally give a conclusion how sustainable way of transition will help in terms of addressing these heat waves in future. So next topic we are going to discuss is PM Mitra Park. So Prime Minister Modi has laid foundation to PM Mitra Park launch Sheva Pakwada in Madhya Pradesh on September 17. So what is this PM Mitra Park? We'll see. So PM Mitra Park is majorly PM Mega Integrated Textile Region and Apparel Parks. So this has been launched by Ministry of Textiles, very important. So what is the major aim of this PM Mitra Park is that, so it is aiming India to be a global player in terms of textile manufacturing and export industry. So the part of vision would be 5F strategy. So what is this 5F? So farm, fiber, factory, fashion, foreign. So this is what is this 5F strategy. From farm to fiber, fiber to factory, factory to fashion, fashion to foreign. So this is about the value chain, how these value chain are going to be even more powerful. So one of the objectives of this PM Mitra program is to develop the world class industrial infrastructure, and also it will promote scaling, integration and competitiveness in the sector. Along with that, it will also generate employment, and it will also encourage the investors, both domestic and global investors. What are the features? So they are establishing 7 Mitra parks across the country, and each will be set up using the public-private partnership model. So it will have integrated facilities like spinning, weaving, processing, dyeing, printing, even logistics. So each park will be spread. So I told you 7 parks, and each park will be spread across 1000 acres, and it will have plug and play infrastructure. That is, you can just go and set up a company there. That is plug and play infrastructure. So the buildings and other things will be already been established. Just going, plugging and playing, like, which means just go and it is very easy to establish a company. So Mitra parks can be either greenfield or brownfield. Greenfield means like starting new independent sites will be developed. Brownfield is there has been already partially developed industrial trunk structure, and we'll be developing after that. That is brownfield. Completely new is greenfield, and already been developed, and it has been further developed would be brownfield sites. So what is the financial outlay? 4,445 crore over 5 years to be invested in this, and they will be giving 2 key support mechanism. One is development capital support, where they will be helping you in terms of developing the capital. Up to 500 crore per park for common infrastructure would be supported. Next is competitive incentive support. This is to support early investors. So if there is a early investors, so this 300 crore per park would be supported, to incentivize them, to attract them. So this is the PM Mitra program, 7 mega integrated textiles, and what are those places? Is that first we are having one in Tamil Nadu, Virudunagar, Telangana, Warangal, Gujarat, Navsari, Karnataka, Kalburagi, and Madhya Pradesh, Dar region, Uttar Pradesh, Lucknow, and Maharashtra, Amravati. So these are the places where they are planning to establish these Mitra parks. So we'll see the prelims question related to it. With reference to PM Mitra scheme, consider the following statement. It aims to develop integrated textile and apparel parks under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. The scheme provides both development capital support and competitive incentive support for setting up parks. The parks under the scheme are to be developed in public-private partnership model. So first statement we see here. So we know that first I told you that it is under the Ministry of Textiles, not Ministry of Commerce and Industries. So in that case, first statement would not be right and second and third statement are right. It is under the Ministry of Textiles, not under the Ministry of Commerce and Industries. Other two statements are right. They have both development capital support and competitive incentive support. And also it works on the public-private partnership model. And third statement is also right. So the answer is 2 and 3 only for this question. So now we are going to discuss a topic about the tension in the South China Sea. This is one of the important topic because South China Sea is strategically very important because it is claimed by many countries and it is a very important geopolitical issues. So what happened recently is that Philippines ship collided near Shoal in South China Sea and this shoal has been disputed recently. So it's a place called as Scarborough Shoal. So this is where fishing is very high. So this place is disputed by different countries. So South China Sea is a highly contested maritime region in Southeast Asia. So important sea lanes. So 30% of global maritime trade, very important. 30% of global maritime trade passes through this South China Sea, which means a value of almost $3 trillion annually. That is the value of this maritime region. So it is rich in oil, not just the maritime region, it is rich in oil, gas, fisheries and strategic choke points. That is why this place is very important. And China is claiming that 9-dash line. So 9-dash line is the latitude. So China claims that using historical map that South China Sea, that is majority of South China Sea, 90% belongs to China. This is a claim of China. But there are other claimants also. The countries like Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, Taiwan. So these countries are also claiming South China Sea. And specifically there are these key area of contest. So this can be questioned. They'll ask this, they'll give this island, they'll ask which water body it is in. First is Spratly Islands, Paracel Islands, Scarborough Shoal and Natuna Islands. So Natuna Islands has overlapping with Indonesia's exclusive economic zone. This concept of exclusive economic zone is very important. So you can see this diagram. So here you can see this red color. This is called as 9-dash line. This is a claim by China. China claims these are the area that belongs to China. So UN clause, United Nations Convention Law on Seas. So according to this, so 200 nautical miles from the land will be considered as exclusive economic zone of that country. And one more thing you should know is that islands can generate exclusive economic zones, but rocks cannot generate exclusive economic zones. So this is United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea, 1982. It has come into picture. And coastal states have this 200 nautical miles from the shore to be the exclusive economic zone. So what China did? So China is claiming, it has created artificial islands and it is claiming that this will come under the exclusive economic zone. So what happened was there was a case in 2016. The Permanent Court of Arbitration has ruled in Philippines versus China's case with respect to South China Sea. So the Permanent Court of Arbitration has ruled that 9-dash line has no legal basis. The claim of China has no legal basis. And it declared that Chinese artificial islands do not generate exclusive economic zone. But China has rejected its rulings and it is still creating tension in the South China Sea. So this is the strategic importance of South China Sea because it has energy security, military significance. See this areas, someone holding this particular area has hold over the trade. Having hold over the trade has hold over power. That is why China wants to claim over the South China Sea. Not just the geopolitical importance, we can see it leads to geopolitical rivalry. Not just that, it has access to trade, it gives military significance, energy security. More importantly, fishery is also very rich in these areas. So that is why many countries are having dispute over this particular land. And what is India's stake in this? How will the geopolitical movement in South China Sea affect India? It will question India's energy security, and this has impact over the Act East policy. And strategic alignment, who India supports. That is a important concept. Since China is involved and India also is involved here. And freedom of navigation, as I told you, like anybody who's passing through Indonesia and has to get access to the eastern part of Asia should pass through South China Sea. So in that case, freedom of navigation is also questioned here. So now we will see the question regarding this particular topic. With reference to South China Sea dispute, consider the following statement. The Permanent Court of Arbitration in 2016 upheld China's 9-line claim over most of the South China Sea. 90%, that is what is China claiming. The South China Sea is rich in hydrocarbon resources and is one of the busiest maritime trade routes in the world. India is direct claimant to some of the disputed islands in the South China Sea. So what is the answer to this question is, first statement is not correct. So here the question is incorrect. Since the first statement is not correct, we can say because Permanent Court of Arbitration has denied China's claim. So it said it has no legal basis. So first statement is not correct. So 1 will be the right answer, and India has no direct claimant. So India is supporting countries, but we don't have a direct claim over the islands there. So 1 and 3 only is the right answer. Second statement is right. Yes, it is rich in hydrocarbon resources and the busiest maritime trade routes. So that statement is right. Since the question is incorrect, answer would be 1 and 3 only. The topic we are going to discuss now is how testicular torsion in children is creating very big issues. This testicular torsion is not very common, but the timely treatment will definitely save the children. So what is this testicular torsion? So testicular torsion is basically a condition where the testicle twists around the spermatic cord. So what happens? It will cut the blood supply. If the treatment is given within 4 to 6 hours, the testis can be saved. But beyond 6 to 8 hours, the chances of saving the testicles will drop very sharply. So this can lead to permanent injury or loss of testicles also. So this will affect both the physical and psychological well-being of the child, because testis is an endocrine organ. It is very important for reproduction. So in that case, this will not just affect the physical health, but also the psychological aspect of the children. What is the symptom? So sudden pain in one testicle, scrotal swelling or redness, nausea, vomiting, and child walking awkwardly, refusing to sit or play. Since they are children, sometimes they won't be able to express what is the pain they are facing. So here, by looking at them, what is the symptoms, we might easily identify in early and save them. So newborn, teenagers and children are at the high risk. So what is the treatment with respect to it? This first is clinical examination or ultrasound, an emergency surgery like untwisting the spermatic cord and fixing both the testicles to prevent recurrence. So this is the major treatment here. So if blood flow is restored in time, testicles can be saved. So if it is too late, removal has to be done, and even then most boys live normally after the surgery with one healthy testicle. But if it is of both testicles being under issue, it will be a major issue. So we'll look into the question related to it. The condition of testicular torsion, so it is a question based on that. The condition occurs when testicle twists around the spermatic cord and blocking its blood supply. That's the first statement. Even if one testicle is removed, normal fertility and hormonal functions are usually maintained. The conditions can occur only in adults and not in children. So in this case, we know the third statement is not correct. So first statement is correct, second statement is correct, but the third statement, as we told now, it is not just in adults, it's more common in terms of newborns also. Newborn, teens, children also. So in that case, third statement is not correct. So answer is 1 and 2 is the right answer for this question. Now we are going to discuss the topics which focuses on preliminary examination. So first one is Engineers Day. So it is celebrated every year on 15th of September, and to commemorate the birth anniversary of Sir Mokshagundam Vishweshwaraya. So to commemorate his birth anniversary, we are celebrating the Engineers Day. So to acknowledge engineers' contributions in shaping the nation's infrastructure and leading the knowledge-driven innovation. So that is why we are celebrating the Engineers Day. And about Vishweshwaraya, he was India's greatest engineer who is renowned for his pioneer contribution. So he was born in 1861. So the major contribution is the innovative flood management system. So innovative flood management system and reservoirs like Osman Sagar at Himayat Sagar and Himayat Sagar are his great works. And he also took measures to protect Vishakhapatnam from sea erosion. We know one of the important port we have is Vishakhapatnam port, and he took the measures to prevent the port getting damaged from the sea erosion. So these can be the questions. So what are his contributions can be the questions. And also he is a pioneer in terms of dam construction and irrigation. So he built the Krishna Raja Sagar dam in 1932, and his automatic sluice gates, it improved the water regulation at multiple dams. So sluice gates are the gates which controls the water flow outside, like flowing from the dam. So he has been given award of the Knight Commander of Order of Indian Empire by King George in 1915, and he was awarded Bharat Ratna in 1955. So the next topic is about Aadhaar. So Supreme Court clarifies that Aadhaar is a statutory document and can be used by voters as a proof of vote. So what is a statutory basis? So according to the Representation of People Act of 1950, so court has clarified that Aadhaar can be used. So according to section 23 clause 4 of Representation of People Act of 1950, it permits election commission officials to use Aadhaar to authenticate entries on electoral rolls. For example, if someone is going to vote and the person is not having voter ID, can Aadhaar be used as a proof? Yes, it can be used as a proof. This can be asked in the examination. Which of the following can be used as a proof to vote in the elections? So there is something called as 12th document. So Supreme Court has previously declared Aadhaar as the 12th document for voters to attach in claims or objections for voter list, inclusion, exclusion, etc. So next is Public Financial Asset Management Program. So EPFO officers selected for prestigious PFAM program 2025 to 26. It is a globally recognized leadership initiative. So this is organized by very important World Bank and the Milken Institute. So the collaboration with Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay National Academy of Security. So they are planning this program, and this is majorly to equip senior professionals with cutting edge expertise in capital markets, governance frameworks, and strategic assessment management. So this is about the Public Financial Asset Management Program. So next is Rabi Abhiyan 2025. So it's a 2-day National Agricultural Conference, and it is organized by the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. So the theme is One Nation, One Agriculture, One Team. So this is a very important concept. One Nation, One Agriculture, One Team. So recently we have these one themed concepts. One Nation, One Ration Card. One Nation, One Election. One Nation, One Agriculture, One Team. Such kind of themes are becoming very important. So please note them down. So what is the aim is to, it aims to provide an opportunity for policymakers, scientists and state representatives to deliberate on preparation, production targets and strategies for Rabi 2025 to 26 season. Now we will see a question regarding this. Aadhaar can be used as a proof of citizenship or domicile. Once issued, Aadhaar can be deactivated or omitted by the issuing authority. So for this question, we should all understand very importantly that Aadhaar is not a proof of citizenship. Very, very important. Aadhaar is definitely not a proof of citizenship. So first statement is not right. And second statement, they say that once issued Aadhaar number cannot be deactivated. That is not true. The UIDAI, the authority, has complete authority to deactivate any Aadhaar number that has been issued. Since both the statements are not correct, neither one nor two is the right answer. That's all about today's discussion. So I request you to subscribe to this channel to get regular updates, and also like, comment if there is any doubt regarding the topics we discussed, and share to your friends about this video. Thank you.